In a small village lived a family with only two members, a husband and a wife. The husband was a hard-working and diligent farmer, dedicated to his work and always striving to improve his life. He spent long hours tending to his fields, carefully planning every move to make sure his crops flourished. He was known throughout the village for his intelligence and his ability to solve problems with clever solutions. His work ethic was unmatched, and his reputation as a smart farmer spread far and wide. His wife, on the other hand, was quite different. She was simple in nature and did not possess the clever tricks or sharp wit that her husband had. She was kind-hearted and innocent, but there was one major flaw in her character. She could not keep secrets. Whatever happened within the walls of their home, no matter how trivial or private, she would always share it with others, especially her sisters-in-law. This habit of speaking openly about everything that went on in the household often upset her husband. The husband would frequently remind her that matters of the home should stay within the home, and that it was important to keep certain things private. However, the wife didn't seem to understand the importance of this request. To her, it was just natural to talk about her day, share her thoughts, and tell others about what was going on in her life. This innocent habit, though harmless in her eyes, caused her husband great frustration. He could not help but worry that the people around them would learn too much, and that their private lives would be exposed to others. Despite this, the husband loved his wife dearly and didn't want to cause her any pain or distress. However, he couldn't ignore the fact that her inability to keep secrets could cause serious problems for them in the future. This made him feel trapped, knowing that while he trusted her, he had to be cautious about what he shared with her. His frustration began to grow, but he didn't know how to address the issue without causing tension in their marriage. The husband's worries about his wife's talkative nature would soon lead him to come up with a plan to keep their lives private and safe from the prying eyes of others. The wife's constant need to share the details of their household with others caused growing tension in the marriage. She couldn't seem to help herself, and no matter how many times her husband reminded her to keep things private, she would always tell her sisters-in-law or friends what had happened at home. It wasn't as if she meant to cause trouble. She simply didn't understand the importance of keeping certain matters confidential. To her, talking about the events of her day, or the little things that went on in their house, felt like a natural part of living and sharing with others. But to her husband, this was a major concern. He was a man who valued his privacy, and he knew that sharing too much information with others could lead to trouble. He often explained to her that some things were best kept within the family, but the wife, unable to grasp the significance of these private matters, would continue her habit of speaking freely. She didn't see the danger in talking about their daily lives, and this created a frustrating dynamic between them. The husband, who worked hard and thought deeply about the future, knew that the secrets of their home could not be trusted outside. He worried that people might use any knowledge they had of his private affairs against him, and that his wife's tendency to share everything could potentially harm them. But what troubled him even more was that he loved her, and he didn't want to create a rift between them by being too strict or too harsh on her. However, the constant reminders and explanations seemed to have little effect on her, and this left him feeling helpless. There was a deep sense of worry building in the husband's mind. He knew that while his wife was innocent and didn't mean any harm, her inability to keep secrets could end up jeopardizing their lives. Each time she let slip another detail to someone else, he would feel a sense of dread. It wasn't just about the small, everyday things. It was about the bigger picture. He understood the value of discretion, and he knew that in their village, people were always watching, listening, and eager to talk. The more their private matters were shared, the more vulnerable they would become. He realized that something had to be done to protect both of them from the consequences of her talkative nature. One day, while the husband was out working in the fields, he began to think about how he could build a larger, more comfortable house for them. Their current home was small and cramped, and he felt that they needed more space for their growing needs. The thought of building a bigger house had been on his mind for a while, but he didn't have the resources to hire workers or buy materials. So, he decided to come up with a solution on his own. The husband had a deep understanding of the land around them. He knew where to find good resources and what tools would be necessary for the job. After much thought, he came up with a plan. He would gather stones from a distant location during his free time. Since his work as a farmer kept him busy, he would have to find time between his tasks to go out and search for stones. He believed that if he could gather enough, he could begin the process of building the new house. With this plan in mind, the husband set out on a journey to find the right place to gather the stones. He ventured far from the village, hoping to find a place where there would be a plentiful supply of materials. One day, while walking through the countryside, he stumbled upon an old ruin that had long been abandoned. The area was overgrown with bushes and trees, but the husband, with his sharp eye for finding useful resources, immediately noticed that there might be stones buried beneath the overgrowth. Curious and hopeful, he began clearing the bushes to see if his assumption was correct. As he dug, he uncovered something unexpected, a pot buried in the ground. The pot was old and dusty, but when he opened it, he was shocked to find that it was filled with gold, silver coins, and precious jewelry. For a moment, the husband stood there, frozen in disbelief. He had never imagined finding such a treasure. But as the initial shock wore off, he was filled with both excitement and fear. He realized that this discovery could change everything for them. However, his excitement was quickly replaced by caution. The thought of keeping this treasure a secret, especially from his wife, made him nervous. He knew that she couldn't keep secrets, and if she found out, it wouldn't be long before the whole village knew about their good fortune. The husband, though overjoyed by his discovery, knew that he couldn't keep the treasure a secret forever. His wife, with her habit of talking freely, would eventually find out, and that could lead to disaster. He was a man who valued his privacy, and he knew that sharing such a discovery with anyone, especially his wife, could cause them more harm than good. He had to find a way to protect the treasure and ensure that it stayed hidden. After giving it some thought, the husband came up with a plan. He couldn't risk taking the treasure back to the village right away, nor could he leave it in the ruin where it might be discovered by someone else. He needed to be strategic. The first part of his plan was to distract his wife so she wouldn't notice his absences or ask too many questions. He knew that if she found out, she would tell everyone, and once the word got out, the treasure would no longer be theirs to keep. The husband decided to use his wife's curiosity against her. The next day, he went to the market and bought fish and bread. With these items in hand, he set out on the path leading to the ruin where he had found the treasure. Along the way, he noticed a large spider web in the bushes. He had an idea. He hung the fish in the web, making it look as though the fish had gotten caught there by some kind of magical force. A little further down the path, he tied the bread to a tree, making it appear as if fruit was hanging from the branches. When he returned home later in the afternoon, he told his wife that they needed to go out to collect some stones for their new house. Though it was already getting late, he insisted that she come with him, telling her that she would understand once they reached the spot. As they walked along the path, the husband pointed out the spider web with the fish trapped in it. His wife was shocked and wondered aloud how the fish had gotten there. The husband feigned confusion, saying that he had never seen anything like it before. As they continued, she was even more surprised to see bread hanging on the tree. Her curiosity grew, and she began to think that they were in a magical, enchanted place. As the husband and wife continued along the path, the wife's curiosity was piqued even further. The strange sights of the fish trapped in the spider web and the bread hanging from the tree made her believe they were walking through a mystical place. She was so intrigued by these odd occurrences that she didn't question her husband's insistence on continuing their journey even though it was getting late. The husband had planned this perfectly. By the time they reached the place where the treasure was hidden, his wife would be so caught up in the mysterious atmosphere that she wouldn't suspect anything unusual. When they finally arrived at the spot where the husband had discovered the treasure, the wife was still talking excitedly about the strange sights along the path. She had completely forgotten about the time and was more focused on what she had seen. The husband, see how fascinated she was, felt a sense of relief. He quickly got to work, digging where he had previously found the pot of gold, silver coins, and jewelry. His wife, still caught up in the excitement of the journey, didn't notice anything out of the ordinary as he uncovered the buried treasure. They carefully filled a bag with the coins and jewelry, making sure to take only as much as they could carry. The husband was pleased with the success of his plan. He knew that it would be safer to bring the treasure home now, but he also understood that they couldn't keep it there for long. His wife was still in a state of wonder, and as they walked back to their home, she couldn't stop talking about the strange and magical things they had seen on their journey. That night, the wife lay awake, unable to sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of the treasure and the oddities they had encountered. Despite her husband's warning not to tell anyone, she struggled to keep her discovery a secret. It was so exciting, so unbelievable, that she couldn't help but feel the urge to share it with someone. She tossed and turned in bed, knowing that her husband would be angry if she told anyone, but the temptation to share the news was almost too strong to resist. The next morning, while fetching water, she couldn't contain herself any longer. She limped slightly on purpose to attract the attention of her friends. They immediately asked what had happened, and though she tried to hold back at first, the pressure from her friends was too much. She eventually told them everything about the treasure, except for the strange things she had seen on the way. The wife, despite her husband's clear instructions to keep the treasure a secret, couldn't help herself. She had always been open about everything in her life, and the discovery of the treasure felt like too big a secret to keep. It was just too exciting, too unbelievable for her to hold inside. She kept thinking about it all night, replaying the strange journey, the magical fish in the spiderweb, and the bread hanging on the trees. Her mind raced with the idea that no one would believe her unless she told them. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had to share it. The next morning, as she was walking to fetch water, she began limping slightly on purpose. It wasn't something that she usually did, but she wanted to make sure her friends would notice and ask what had happened. It wasn't long before they saw her and, as expected, asked about her unusual walk. At first, she hesitated, trying to play it off as nothing important. But as her friends persisted and probed for more information, the temptation became too much for her. She couldn't keep it in any longer. Without thinking, she blurted out everything. The treasure, the strange sights along the way, and how they had found the pot filled with gold, silver coins, and jewelry. She told them everything in detail, except for the part about the magical occurrences, like the fish in the spider web and the bread on the trees, not wanting to sound too ridiculous. She didn't think about the consequences of sharing this secret. She was too caught up in the thrill of the discovery. Soon, word spread through the village, as it always did with news like this. People were eager to hear about the treasure, and before long, the story reached the king. The king, curious about the rumors, sent his soldiers to bring the husband and wife, along with the treasure, to the palace. The wife, though excited to be part of such a big story, started to feel a sense of dread as they were led to the court. She began to regret her decision to share the secret, realizing that her actions had brought more trouble than she had anticipated. The husband, already knowing what was coming, was not worried. He had hidden the treasure in a safe place, anticipating that the secret would eventually come out. The village buzzed with rumors about the treasure that the wife had so freely shared. What had been a quiet and private discovery was now the talk of the town. It didn't take long for the news to reach the king, who, intrigued by the story, decided to investigate. The king's soldiers were sent to fetch the husband and wife, along with the treasure, and bring them to the palace. The husband, already aware that the secret had been exposed, wasn't worried about the soldiers' visit. He had anticipated this moment and had already hidden the treasure in a secure location, far from the prying eyes of the king's men. When the soldiers arrived at the couple's home, they searched the entire house for any signs of the treasure but found nothing. The husband calmly played along, showing no signs of concern. They then took the couple to the king's court, where the husband's nerves remained steady. He knew that the situation was delicate but trusted in his plan. The king, eager to get to the truth, immediately asked the husband if the story about the treasure was true. The husband, without hesitation, denied it. He remained calm and collected, saying, "My wife is lying. If she really saw the treasure, she should know exactly where it is." His words were firm and confident, and he hoped they would convince the king that the entire story was a fabrication. The king, who was clearly skeptical, turned to the wife and asked her to tell the truth. The wife, now nervous and unsure of what to do, found herself trapped. She had already told everyone about the treasure, but now, faced with the king's direct question, she couldn't remember the exact location of the treasure. With great hesitation, she replied, "Maharaj, I don't know the exact place, but I saw fish stuck in a spider web and bread hanging from trees along the way." The court erupted in laughter at her bizarre explanation. The king himself chuckled at the absurdity of her words. Realizing that the wife had been too careless with her words, he ordered her to be punished. Beat her with sticks and throw her out of the court. The husband, having successfully kept the treasure hidden, left the palace in relief. The treasure was safe, and his wife had learned a hard lesson about the dangers of speaking too freely. The morale of the story was clear. When it comes to certain things, discretion and silence are far more valuable than words. The events that unfolded in the king's court were a clear reminder of the dangers of being too talkative and indiscreet. The wife's inability to keep the secret about the treasure not only led to her embarrassment. The king's wrath was swift, and her careless words brought her nothing but shame and humiliation. It was a hard lesson learned, and one that changed her outlook on the importance of discretion. The husband, on the other hand, was able to protect the treasure and keep his secret safe, all thanks to his careful planning and understanding of human nature. By using his wife's curiosity to his advantage. But while the husband may have been pleased with his success, the lesson here isn't just about cleverness or the need to hide valuable things from the world. The real lesson lies in the importance of trust and the responsibility that comes with sharing secrets. In our own lives, we often find ourselves in situations where we're entrusted with information, whether it's a personal matter, a confidential piece of news, or even something as simple as a friend's secret. The wife's inability to hold on to her secret teaches us how easily words can spread, sometimes beyond our control, and how once shared, they can never be taken back. In the age of social media and instant communication, this lesson is more relevant than ever. What we say can spread far and wide, reaching people we never intended to hear it. However, just as importantly, the story also highlights the value of being wise in what we choose to share. There are moments in life where silence is the best option when we need to keep things to ourselves, to protect not just our own privacy, but also the privacy of others. The husband's actions, while somewhat deceptive, remind us of the necessity of thinking before we speak and considering the potential impact of our words. It's not about keeping secrets for the sake of secrecy. It's about protecting what is important to us, and sometimes that means exercising restraint. In the end, the story of the talkative wife reminds us that wisdom lies not in how much we speak, but in knowing when and what to say, especially in situations where the stakes are high.